We have a question on Pal Talk. Let's take that question. How can we know that the four horsemen in Revelation are pointing to God's warning to the churches? Well, let's take a look at Revelation chapter 6, where we read about four horsemen. And actually, the four horsemen here are speaking about different things. For instance, there's the first horse in verse 2. The white horse that goes forth, it's a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ going forth conquering and to conquer, a picture of the gospel that goes out into the world victoriously, and it's followed by a red horse, and the rider on the red horse seeks to take peace from the earth, and Christ is peace. So red is a color that identifies with Satan. It's Satan that is being contrary. He's set against the gospel as it goes forth. And then verse 5, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast, or third living creature, say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts, or four living creatures, say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. The black horse, considering the language here, the pair of balances and the reference to a measure of wheat and 3 measures of barley, relates to the gospel that is impacted during the Great Tribulation. And the Great Tribulation is the time when God began the judgment on the corporate church, the churches and congregations of the world. And when God began that judgment, within the church were still elect. It wasn't until later on that the Lord opened up his word and the understanding of his people to it that we were to come out of the church. And so the command is to bring the judgment on the congregations, but hurt not the oil and the wine. It's similar to Ezekiel chapter 9, when the men go forth with destroying weapons, and God says, Begin at my sanctuary, but then he says, Hurt not any that have the mark. In Ezekiel 9, verse 5, And to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city, and smite. Let not your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. The ones with the mark would be their father's mark, the mark in their foreheads that Revelation mentions elsewhere, indicates they're bought with a price, they're bondmen of the Lord Jesus Christ, and so they're not to be slain. And it's the same thing with the rider on the black horse. Hurt not the oil and the wine, and the oil and the wine would be the fruits of a harvest. And fruit points to those that are brought into the kingdom of heaven, the saved of God. And then the final horse is the pale horse in verse 8 that identifies with the final judgment, which relates to our present time. And so the four horses progress from one stage of God's program to the next. The first, the white horse, we could relate to the church age, going forth, conquering to conquer. Satan, the red horse, combating it, again, throughout the church age. The black horse, the great tribulation that follows the church age. The pale horse, the judgment that follows the great tribulation. It's very orderly. It progresses from one stage of God's program to the next.